Okay, well, welcome everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. We want to be, very respectful of your time for today. So today's topic is going to be about the business benefits of lifelong learning. And for those of you that are in that learning and development, this is our ideal topic to talk about. We could do this for hours. So we're going to talk a little bit about the agenda, and then my co-presenter and I will just give you a little background for ourselves, and then we'll delve right into the meat of today. So let's look at the agenda topics for today that we're going to talk about. Cultural transformation and lifelong learning in there. So there's lots that we're going to talk about in there. Everything. The idea is that we'll sort of share some strategies of how can we go about in creating this transformation for you within the organization, as well as talking about maybe some initiatives to incorporate that as well. Team effectiveness, communication, that piece of it. What can we look at? We are a global workforce at this point in time. How can we go about in making that a team that's effective with one another? Whether you are both all together in an office space or you're separated throughout the globe. We'll take a look at about a little bit of that and some of the discussions for it. Motivating. We want to motivate them because let's face it, we've all been killed by PowerPoint over time. So we want to make sure that we are creating these engaging experiences for them. And we'll talk about what we can suggest for you to be able to do that. And Ashley is going to present with me as well. She's going to take a look at from the OpenSesame standpoint, what are the things that they could help provide for you in that as well. And then let's take a look. I'm from the LMS side of the world. So I'm going to look at it as how can we use that tool that you already have in-house and be able to use that as a catalyst for being able to bring all of this information in, make them aware of what you have. And then the last one is talking a little bit about those modern approaches that come along with the learners to make sure that we're keeping with all of that. So let me just give you a little background of myself. I've been in learning and development now for over 18 years. I love technology. Technology is my passion, but what I really want with technology is to be able to use it to increase that type of access that people have. Because our primary resource within all of our organizations is our people. Those are where we spend our most money, and we need to make sure that they are taken care of. So I want to be able to go in, and the results of that is that we end up with loyal and confident employees who end up contributing to our overall organization outcome. And I'm going to turn over to my co-presenter, Ashley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Brown. I am a customer success manager with OpenSesame, which if you haven't heard of us, you'll get to know a little bit more about our organization throughout the webinar. But we are, in short, an e-learning content provider. We offer the highest quality courses on a variety of topics, from compliance to business skills to leadership, from really the world's top publishers. And I smiled when Nancy said that she loves technology, because I actually do not love technology. I'm growing to love technology, but I think that actually highlights the benefit of OpenSesame's partnership with Meridian. OpenSesame is the content, and Meridian is the high quality LMS, or the system that you can use to access that great content. And so I'm very excited to be here today to work with Nancy and to hopefully bring some new insight that will help all of you with your learning and development program.
Wonderful. And we have behind the scenes as our, person behind the scenes is Alyssa, who is with Meridian as well. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, if you would go ahead and place them in that question and answer box, and then Alyssa will kind of monitor that and let us know if there are any questions and be able to stop us so that we can answer them, or if they make sense for us to answer them at the end when there's kind of a more of an open Q&A time at that point. So please feel free to put information and questions in there. All right, so let's talk about the business benefits. Let's go into here. Let's talk first about what is lifelong learning. There's so many definitions out there, but this is one in particular that I happen to love. This is from the Center for Creative Leadership. Many of you have heard of them. What I love about this definition is that there are a few key pieces to it. One of them is that they mention both individuals as well as the organizational learning. You really need to have both, especially to be able to move things forward. And that the idea that knowledge is not something that we just push to them, and that hopefully with the ideas that they're going to gain that knowledge is that they share their knowledge amongst each other. So it's a both of sharing as well as gaining of that knowledge in the overall organization. So let's just talk about the different types of lifelong learning in here. We have organization types of learning, and that in some examples of what that might look like. DEI is a very key for us right now in so many environments. We're pushing a lot of that environment because we want our employees to be cognizant and understanding of all of the variety of individuals that we have in there. New technology. As organizations, technology is changing on a daily basis. We see that in both our personal lives as well as our professional lives. New processes. As that new technology comes on, our process might have to change. Well, we need to make sure that the overall organization is understanding of how to use the technology, how does it impact their processes. So that's how we take the organization type of learning in there. And it might even be as simple as learning about new markets that are out there. So we want to be able to go in then and look also at professional. So professional is now more at that individualized level. We may have to upskill people. They need to learn how to code because we know that maybe down the line we have a few more openings coming up on a development team. So we want them to learn how to code. It's of an interest to them. We may need to reskill people because with that new technology, maybe some of the positions are no longer necessary. So we need to reskill them so that we can place them in other areas within your organization. It might be from a professional that they earn a certification. Think about the PMPs, for myself, the CPTD. All of those are things that are done on a professional for me, but yet they also lend for my being able to support the organization. And then personal ones, learning a second language, learning about better, more effective type of communication. And that might be that someone wants to learn how to be better at presenting or being able to be more effective in their email communication. Those are things that I'm doing for my personal growth, but at the same time, it's also going to benefit the organization as well. So, the idea behind professional is that it's going to increase the employee's value, whether that's through their ability to lead, to provide cross support to other areas, and overall potentially be able to reduce those types of expenses. It's going to help us improve those efficiencies, effectiveness. So now we're going to have improved workflows, less mistakes, and things like that we go along with. When we go back to the organization, we talk about DEI. There could be some ideas in there. We could do DEI learning on monthly information and activities and gamification. Those are all intend to help foster things. They're meant to encourage and foster team building, social skills, get us out of having a regional or a country specific focus, get us thinking about the global entity that's out there. Those new markets I mentioned earlier. Okay, as we move into understanding that, that might be a marketplace we're moving into. Well, we need to know, how do we act when we're interacting with these other cultures? And even within our own, say your organization is not global, it's strictly domestic, then we still have different cultures even within our own United States. Okay, whether that's rural, urban, north versus south, east versus west, we're all in there. So we really want to go and look at lifelong learning from all of these perspectives. So let's take a look at some of the things that are available to indicate that you are crafting an environment that is about learning. It's a learning organization. Do you have a safe environment for your end users to be able to provide feedback And these can be done by things such as incorporating them into a quarterly one-on-one discussions. Those discussions revolve around both professional and personal development. And believe me, they will be awkward conversations the first few times you have them. Absolutely. But if your organization can use some type of a template, it makes that awkwardness a little bit easier because you're following kind of a script as you go through that. And then over time, those conversations will definitely be much more free flowing at it. You want those employees to talk about what's their dream job because their dream job might not be the one they're in, but it might be one you need over in another part of the organization. You didn't even know they were interested in it. So that's the piece of it. And now you can begin building them. Routine events that can bring both your executives as well as your employees together in one place. Lunch and learns. You can do lunch and learns with executives that could be in person or virtual. They don't have to be long. Everyone has this concept it has to be this hour, hour and a half. Do 30 minutes. Ask random employees to attend. Give your executive 3 to 4 questions to ask. So now you've given them a script and they're feeling comfortable talking about what are people's successes? What are their challenges? You can use a scribe to come in, record all of that information in an anonymous type of method that can be then shared back out and potentially used as ideas for moving forward with other things. Lunch and learns can also be within your team. I recently did one for mine on how to use our in-house report writer with the LMS. I showed the team how to create those. Well, later on, I took that recording, I put it in my internal LMS. One of my developers went and watched it. He deals with the SQL on the backside of that report tool. Well, now he had an opportunity to see what it looked like from the front side. So it gave him a much broader perspective of it. After action reports, when you do a project, bring everyone together afterwards for, some type of a debriefing, not just the project team, but the stakeholders, the participants, everyone, because you may not find out that the project you thought went really great. Guess what? It created more work downstream than you thought it did. So it's something to bring back in there. Learning communities. Do you have those? And it can be in-person time or it could be something virtual. Again, using your LMS if need be. You could create collaboration spaces with different topics in there. You can do mind mapping with people. You can, if your external is your audience, go out and learn from them, gather their ideas, get their feedback, all those perspectives to make your organization get more in there. And I think it's key to remember is that learning, although it can be formal, and we think, learning has to be in that formal kind of e-learning, but it can also be OJT. And I'm a big advocate of hybrid. I love the idea of using your e-learning to be able to provide that fundamental information. And then the OJT is when they're actually applying it, sharing with each other, going and building off of one another in there. And then the last part of kind of an indicator is that you can go in and provide people with some designated time for learning, because that we now know becomes a priority within the organization. 30 minutes in a month, everyone goes in and all they do is some development work. Well, that development time that they're doing is all pretty much based off of what you had in their discussions. So if you've been having those environment feedback discussions, this is a good time for them then to take that information and actually begin the actual acquisition of information and knowledge. And all of this is then influenced through some external factors. I'm going to let Ashley go from here.
Great. Thank you so much. And as you were talking through some of these strategies and ideas for really integrating learning into the modern workplace and making it accessible for learners, it reminds me of conversations that I have with the organizations we support every day and really reinforces the fact that learning in the workplace is more complicated now than it has been in the past. And our team at OpenSesame, we try to keep our finger on the pulse of how things are changing, both by talking with the organizations we work with, but also noticing trends in learning and development. And there was an insightful report from PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, that really talks about some key themes in the workplace of the future and some of the complex and competing forces that are really shaping the workplace. And the first of these are technological breakthroughs. So I know you kind of have to be living under a rock to not be thinking about or hearing about AI and how that will be affecting your workplace. It's changing the nature of jobs that are available. It's changing the number of jobs that are available. Technology is certainly going to improve our lives from a learning perspective. It's going to change how and when people can learn and the ways that they want to learn. And so we try to integrate this in how we're working with customers. Demographic shifts are also really front and center now. With a few regional exceptions, the world's population is aging. People are working longer. And so we have a mix of generations in the workforce, a bigger mix of generations now than we have previously. And that's really going to continue to be the case. And so when you're thinking about creating a learning program, you've got to think about how are you going to meet all of the different styles of learners, and how are you going to really offer content in the way that people like to learn and how they feel most comfortable learning. The third change that this report highlighted was rapid urbanization. The report pointed out that by 2030, close to 5 billion people will be urban dwellers, but by 2050, the urban population will increase by about 72%. I think also something that factors into this is the fact that people don't necessarily have to live where they work. And that means that they're not necessarily going to be working at the same time, and they're not going to have the same schedules. And so how can we make sure that no matter where you're living, no matter where you're working, learning can become part of what you do at work every day? And then the final two shifts really are related to global economic power and how that impacts how we think about the business ethos, how you're attracting new talent, how you are responding to changes in the economy. And then a lot of organizations we work with are also thinking about the impact that they're making from a resource and climate change perspective. And so these are all the factors. Some of these may be in play for organizations more than others, but this is a lot of what is happening in the background when people are thinking about how do we construct a relevant and accessible learning and development program.
And Ashley, as you were talking about the technological breakthroughs, I got to thinking about all of us think about where were we 10, 15 years ago? Would we ever have envisioned the idea of needing somebody in a cybersecurity? That's not a role we would have thought about back then. But
It's
those
really
technologies
true.
have now really crafted some avenues. So as we're looking at engaging our people now with all of these impacts, we have to keep in mind we need to teach them about learning so that we are prepared when those types of changes are required for us.
I agree. And it's just not possible for or I haven't seen a team that's able to keep up with all of the changes if they're just making content on their own. I have the privilege of working with some of the most talented L&D professionals across a wide variety of industries, and things are changing so quickly that off-the-shelf content is becoming a more and more integral part of learning and development, because it's just not possible to keep up with change if you're doing it on your own.
There's so many different changes that happen in so many various topics that it allows you to pull from all of those experts in those particular areas.
Absolutely. And that really comes through here on this slide. Learning can be the common denominator that can help an organization really survive, but also thrive in the face of change. We already talked about how people are working longer and because they're living longer. So we've got more generations in the workplace. The idea of workplace diversity can mean so many different things. When I talk with the organizations that I support, I get really excited because a lot of companies are embracing the idea that we hear a lot about equity and inclusion in terms of it being a training topic, but L&D really has to think about how do you live and breathe equity and how do you integrate DEI principles into the fabric of what you're actually doing in the workplace, not just something that you're training people on. This is what diversity is, this is what inclusion is, but how can we then as an organization be diverse and inclusive in terms of the type of training that we're putting in front of our employees and how we're allowing them to access that training.
So let's move on and talk a little bit about the team effectiveness piece of this. So I'm going to look at it from an LMS viewpoint in here at this point. What I want to talk to you about is we have all of us, we have amazing tools in-house. We have our intranets, we have the LMS, but we tend to use them within the box thinking of, what were they intended for? I want you to get outside of the box. I want you to start thinking about what are the things your LMS can do for you? So here's some ideas that come into mind is that creating some type of a collaboration space within them. And so you go in and you created some type of content, and then you add on to it a collaboration space. So they do that content, that e-learning, whatever it happens to be. It could be an in-person classroom or an e-learning. And then at the end, we start using the collaboration space to start engaging them. We put questions in, they reply. The more people reply, the more someone else replies. And now they're beginning to share their knowledge. So it's no longer about them just gaining it. They're beginning to share and build on it with one another. If you have any type of community events that are out there, use your LMS to tell people about those. Craft some type of content in there that when they go to register, it redirects them over to that community event. All of those types of events that might be out there. Do you have a ton of information internally and it's spread everywhere? It's on the intranet over here. It's on a group drive over there. Oh, somebody knew something over here. All of that. What you can use is use your LMSs to become that centralized point. Create content, and I use content with, very large quotations around it. But the content idea is that it redirects them. So if they need to do something off of your intranet, we've created content that when they launch, it drives them there so that they can pull it in. One of the things that I like to be able to tell everybody in terms of an LMS is when we want to find something in our own personal lives, we Google it. There's our verb, we Google. What I want you to all to be able to have inside your organizations is I want people, when someone says, well, do you know about XYZ? I want the response from your other person to be, well, did you LMS it? Did you go and look? If the name of yours happens to be an academy, did you go and look in the academy? You want them to go there for their information and then use that as a centralized point. If you provide some type of specialty instructor-led events, use the capability within your LMS to reserve seats for different groups. That way there, your audience that attends is cross-functional. And by having them in there as cross-functional, not only do you get different perspectives, but it helps break down the silos. At that point, they're all together. Then they go back to their areas with the information and they begin the sharing process. And we did this in a class I was in the past. We did a crucial conversations, and we deliberately made sure that we had people in there that were from finance, people that were from management. As we had some executives that attended, all the different departments, so that we made sure that when somebody spoke about it, someone else thought, oh, well, I didn't know about that. And we began sharing that knowledge within the environment. And of course, we need to remember that learning in of itself is not a one-time event. And we hear that frequently, but we want to make sure that it is consistently reinforced. So if they do an e-learning or they attend an instructor-led event, how do we make sure we reinforce that for them? You again can use your LMS for that, the collaboration spaces to again have that type of interaction with one another. You can set it up so that they are auto-enrolled into follow-up courses. Based on attendance in this one, you're auto enrolled into this next one. Or it might be that you've given them some type of a survey that they turn around and they answer immediately after their course ends. And don't make it the typical smile sheet. How was the room temperature? How was the book material? Were you able to read the font? Ask those next level questions. Based on what you learned today, how are you going to apply that? Okay, go back to that old Kirkpatrick model that sits out there. Get into that level too. And then you can even use it to send out those same types of surveys, but to the managers, and do that at a 30-day window. Now the manager questions are about how are you seeing them apply it? How are you seeing improvements in them since attending and or taking this type of training? Okay, so you're beginning to get into business impacts at that point. And it also enables the manager at that point with that type of feedback afterwards to be able to see, are there any kinds of tools that the learner might need? That when they got back and they were trying to do it, they were lacking something. So if they wait that 15 or 20 days to get the learner feedback, now we're able to find out what is it they need. And we're able to provide that type of feedback in there. It will take you time to build this as kind of a centralized repository. But again, this is an investment in your number one resource, your people, bringing it all together so they can find it in one place.
This, what you see here on the screen, is an overview of the content in the Open Sesame catalog. If you're going to be able to accomplish the goals that Nancy was just speaking about and really have your LMS work to the fullest of its capabilities, you have to, of course, offer high quality content that's going to engage your learners and evolve with them. And as I mentioned in my role at Open Sesame, I have the privilege of working with some really talented L&D professionals across a wide range of industries, from technology to hospitality, healthcare, government, manufacturing. And although many of these organizations do, of course, create content on their own and certainly do quite a bit to design a learning and development program based on the specific needs of their organization, the off-the-shelf content has really evolved to the point where it truly is possible to build a comprehensive collection of high quality, multidisciplinary, and multilingual content that's going to meet the needs of every learner. And so our Open Sesame Marketplace is divided into these key areas that you see here in blue. And then some of those subcategories are just really scratching the surface of what's available there. And in my role at Open Sesame, I work with organizations to really get to understand what their needs are and help them build the types of programs that Nancy has been talking about, with elements that offer employees the opportunity to collaborate with one another, but also to do things on their own and learn asynchronously. If an organization is engaging in some instructor-led training, perhaps we can curate some options that can be pre-work or post-work to those activities. If the organization is building some robust training in-house, we can do an exercise where we work to see what's being covered as part of that in-house training and how can we take it even to the next level through the off-the-shelf offerings. And so with the depth and breadth of the catalog that's there, it allows us to really spend a lot of our energy partnering with the organization, understanding their specific goals. And then later on in this webinar, I'll talk about how we're able to curate and work with some of our subject matter experts to make sure that our customers can avail themselves to those just right courses for their learners and offer them to their learners at the point of need.
And just to supplement from Ashley's discussion of off the shelf, sometimes we have this concept that it has to be an all or nothing everything. And where in reality, the discussions can be that maybe there's a segment of your organization that needs, content that you don't feel comfortable crafting in-house. Well, go and talk to them about what do they have for that particular part. So it doesn't have to be the entire catalog. Maybe you want to start off with your technical team. Okay, so let's see what technology type of pieces they have. Okay, we've seen it work really well. There's been benefits to the organization. We can move and expand on that. So do not go into the idea that you have to do it as an all or nothing. Go in with what you can do now and work and expand it over time as you get buy-in if you have any resistance internally.
That really is, Nancy, what some of our most successful organizations do is they really look at it strategically, and they think about, sometimes they approach it from, well, what's an area of training that we're spending a lot of unnecessary resources, or something that we feel a lot of pressure around that we can alleviate. And honestly, sometimes it's compliance. Compliance regulations are changing all the time. Different states and even cities are adding new requirements. That's a great area to go off the shelf, because then you're relieving some of that stress and burden from your team. And then as people find more success and they get engaged with off the shelf, then it's a lot easier to go into other areas. And I know that's actually what we're going to move into talking about in just a moment, is building those engaging learning experiences.
Well, that's our segue into the next piece, which is helping create those kinds of engaging learning experiences. All right, so let's talk about some of those tools that are out there. Gamification is, and not only is it a hot topic, but take a look in terms of in your LMS. Is there gamification that you can do that it has within it? Can it go in and support that type of organizational learning? So let's go back and let's talk about a little bit, circle back to those DEI type of initiatives that you could do that we mentioned a little bit earlier. So we could have some e-learning off the shelf courses that are in there. We award them points when they finish. They've got their foundational information. Well, then we turn around and we create events. Maybe that there's an event that they need to attend, it might be instructor led, some type of a webinar. We do a follow-up survey to it to solicit the feedback, ideas, and then we award them points if they complete the survey. We have live events. If you not only do you attend the live event, but you actually participate in there, you get awarded those types of points. You can craft leaderboards. They can look and see, are, competitive. You can make your leaderboards anonymous versus, public type of thing. You can select what content you want to have part of it. Maybe for this particular quarter, we're in the compliance period. So we're only going to put the compliance core content in with the gamification. Next quarter, if this is about DEI initiative, so we're going to do something for one of the items in the calendar for this month and keep moving it through. So we want to make sure that we have engaging content in there. If you are, the type of organization that creates the PowerPoint that has the 400 words on a page and size 10 font to fit it all in, has no pictures, no colors, things like that, you don't have an internal designer, that's where you're going to turn to that external, like OpenSesame, that have those professionals that create that and that engaging content. They can, not only can you curate internally of what you have available across all these different areas, but they can also help you curate out of the catalog that they have available to you. Thinking in terms of some of the types of, gamification and events, they could be, monthly type of information. We craft a banner for it in your LMS that talks about and says, hey, don't forget we have this event, or, oh, I'm going to highlight that I have these 4 new courses in here that you might be interested in. All those types of activities. It might even be leading it towards the idea of, if you are in an office environment, you take whatever that monthly initiative is and you have some type of an office get together. Everyone brings a dish of food for that particular month associated, whatever culture happens to be the one that is being highlighted. So everyone has that opportunity. Do fun facts, trivia games. Use your LMS to be able to engage them. Don't think of it as the one that, they get up in the morning and, oh, we have to log in because now we have to do compliance. We want this to be a place they go to learn. And so that's where the engaging piece of it has to be.
If you are working to build that engaging element of your learning development program, which I really think is vital to sustain long-term engagement and answer the question for the learner, what's in this for me? I think it's important now more than ever to answer that question because people have more and more on their plate. This is again where off the shelf can make it easier for you to actually do that. If you're creating everything on your own in-house, it can be hard to have elements of training that are in the language that people want or need, or that are in lots of different styles. And so, because of changes in technology that have made it possible for our publishers to offer engaging content, you really have at your fingertips a catalog of options that's going to meet the needs of every learner. If you are looking for VR options or you're looking for podcast style training, we have those available in our catalog, and you can actually search by how the content is delivered to really narrow your search by the key topics that you're looking for, but also in how that training is delivered. If you've got learners on your team who want to have a resource that they can refer back to, you can search by that and offer them training that has text-based resources. Again, if you are doing things in-house, but you want to make sure that people come to the training with some baseline knowledge, we can curate that for you as well. We have something called our curation alignment process survey that will really help you get to know your learners and make sure that you understand all the different requests for how people want to learn. And then we'll really partner with you to make sure that you find those just right options.
And with your LMS to go along with that, Ashley mentioned the idea of some of the content being available in alternative languages. Look inside of your LMS and see, can it be actually transitioned so all the standard text is in another language? So if you have somebody in France and they log into the LMS, all of that standard language is in their language, as opposed to English for everything across the globe. And then they're able to then find content that goes along with their language as well. So I think you need to make sure that you have both of those as kind of hand in hand options for you.
Yes, and once you're doing that, especially, we work with so many organizations that are global, and the workforce itself is becoming more and more global. Making small tweaks and changes like that can really help you embrace the idea of having a global workforce, and it can help you build a learning culture that is stronger because of all the different, people and places that are represented on your team.
So that kind of brings us to the idea of global awareness. So use your LMS to be able to advertise these types of global events. So an example for you, International Women's Day. This is something I've done in an organization where we make the idea that, we use the LMS to advertise that on a certain day, everyone's going to wear the same color, so that we are in support of, International Women's Day on that particular day. You can go in and say, we're going to go do a trivia game. And that trivia game is about all of these different women and accomplishments, over the years. And that can be created as content in your LMS. Remember, you can use your surveys and things like that to be able to use that as a quote trivia type of game. You can use the collaboration piece of yours to go in and brainstorm possible events. So we craft a piece of content with a collaboration space in it, to be able to go in and say, okay, who wants to work on this aspect? Who wants to work on that? And then they enroll into that, content, when in reality, it's nothing more than a way of being able to manage your team in there. Everyone's able to see what's happening, who's adding things, who's not, what are the finalized types of action items. And if you're geographically diverse, then you can create separate spaces. Okay, everybody who is over here in the US is going to be in this space. If you happen to be somewhere in the EMEA region of Europe, you're going to do this one. If you happen to be in Asia Pac region, then you'll be over in this group, so that they are working not only in their own areas, but also have that ability to see, but everyone across the organization is able to see what's happening.
This is
And
really
then Go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry, Nancy. I was just
No.
saying that this is really valuable. And I know based on conversations that I have with customers, it is relevant because what I hear is that these are the kinds of things that people want to do, but they feel like, oh, I don't necessarily have the time to do this. And so what you're talking about with the capability of the LMS and using the LMS as a tool really will actually help people save time rather than thinking, oh, this is something else I have to add to my plate. We've got, even at OpenSesame, a lot of resources. We've got curated curriculums for things like International Women's Day. We've got sample emails and templates that you can use to promote these, but having your LMS as a vehicle that you can use to actually make some of this happen takes a lot of the burden off of people and makes it easier for them to step into activities like this.
Absolutely. And I was talking in here about the trivia games in terms of, crafting them in there as a surveyor, even a test. And it can be a test that you set the pass rate at 0. I mean, just because you have a test doesn't mean somebody has to actually pass or fail. It's just use the actual functionality to do what you're trying to get done in there, because tests often enable you to provide feedback on a question. So if someone didn't get that right question correct, we're able to provide feedback then that says, actually, this other one's correct. It would be the correct one, and here's why. And now you're getting them a little more information at the same time. And you can make the decision about, am I going to use the LMS to distribute it out? Am I going to assign it to people? Or am I going to put it out there so that they can turn around and self-enroll? And then that becomes part of the gamification process. So we leave it for self-enrollment, but it's part of gamification. Gamification could be prizes at the end, and they don't have to be monetary. They could be monetary. I mean, we see on monetary ones like an Amazon gift card, but it could be non-monetary, depending on your work environment. Hey, Fridays becomes Casual Friday Day, or we have anything like that. So you really can use non-monetary as well as monetary type of prizes in there. Use this to be able to go out and be able to distribute that in there. We're trying to break, using your LMS with this global awareness, we're trying to break out of that regional or country focus, and get us out into that global. We are intertwined as a society, whether we I think we all discovered that at COVID when we were all waiting for our goods and services to show up, just how interconnected we really are to the things that we use on a daily basis. So, in media, again, in all its forms, good and bad, connect us to those other parts of the world that even our grandparents, even our parents only dreamed of at some point in time. Use your LMS for your organization communication and connection.
Here, we will be able to really use the benefit, the depth and breadth of the off-the-shelf learning to help you craft a comprehensive curriculum. I think the thing that we like to emphasize when from the Open Sesame perspective when we're working with a customer is that you don't actually have to do this on your own. So our learning catalog is managed by a group of subject matter experts that have an expertise that aligns with the publishers that they focus on and the areas that we offer. So we've got a compliance specialist, we've got an HR expert, we've got someone who focuses on business skills, we've got a health and wellness expert, a safety expert. And so when we're partnering with an organization that has specific competencies that they know they need to address, or they want to build a learning path for a specific role or a career trajectory within their organization, we can pair them with that curation expert, share with them the topics that the organization knows they need to cover, and that curator will hand select courses that they know will work to meet those needs based on what they know about managing our catalog, but also about the conversations that they're having with publishers and the trends that they know are relevant in their area of expertise. And so a lot of times we say to an organization, add us to your org chart because we want to be part of your team. We don't want you to feel burdened by all of the options that you have at your fingertips. We really want you to feel empowered to to think about, all of the great ideas that Nancy just mentioned. You can create games, you can create opportunities for people to collaborate in new ways. You can use training as a way to connect different parts of your organization. We want you to feel excited and empowered by that and not think, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to have the time and the resources to do that? That by partnering with an LMS and an off-the-shelf provider, you actually are expanding the capability of your team and expanding the tools and resources that are there so that you can spend a lot of your time and energy on those things that are unique to your organization and require that expertise from your team. But for the things that you can outsource or delegate to a partner and tell them exactly what you want and have them work with you to create that, we love to be that type of partner.
And once you've worked with somebody like Ashley at Open Sesame and you pulled this and curated this content and you put it over into your LMS, then you're able to use the LMS to identify the target audience for this. And is it a target audience that we need to push it to? Is it a target audience that we want to have them pull this as they need it? So we can craft those learning journeys in your LMS to be able to craft something that they want to be able to go and do on their own at some point. All right, so let's talk about the last topic here, the modern learning approaches that we want to be able to take a look at. So we talked about, Ashley mentioned this earlier, AI. We all know this is coming to us. We've seen it in the news, good and bad that goes with it. We're going to look at the good side of the AI piece, which is that you can use in your LMS the idea of AI to help make recommendations to your learners. And you're able to set that up. Now, keeping in mind, AI is an algorithm behind the scenes. So the more it learns and more information it gathers, the more it can change and adapt along with it. So AI-driven curation based on maybe their past completions. Any others that are users that are in the same role, what did they take that we could recommend to this user? Because, Mary on the other side of the organization who does the same role did these 3 courses. So we might be able to recommend them over there. You can do AI based off of someone's own self-identified interests. So use your LMS to set it up. So you've got certain tagging in there. So if they say, I'm interested in interviewing, and they hit that tag up, boom, it gives them all those things in the catalog that go around that particular topic. So it allows them to begin going in there. And then the idea of them shaping their own trajectories. Let them go in and be able to save content that they see and curate the things they want out of the catalog. And they can save that. So at some point in time, they can go back to it again and say, oh, I want to be able to do this, this, and this. I don't have the time right now, but I want to do that. Think of that, and we do it all the time in all of our shopping environments where we save for later and we come back to it. We want them to be able to do the same thing in the LMS because they may be in there for one thing now, but something catches their eye. Okay, we save that. And now and at another point, they can come back and say, well, I have a few minutes. Let me go back and take a look at that. So being able to make sure your LMS has that capability of supporting them through these types of AI and their own curation process.
We actually leverage the power of AI through our own curation alignment process and allow the organizations we work with to use the power of AI when they're doing self-service curation. So if you're working with Open Sesame courses, you actually never have to curate on your own unless you want to. We are always happy to curate for you. It's a complimentary service we provide. And to help you maximize that curation service, we have something called the Curation Alignment Process Survey, which asks your people from your team, whether it's your L&D team or whether you want to survey learners from different parts of your business. It asks the learners how they want to learn. and what they want to learn about. And then based on the answers that they provide, you watch a short clip from each publisher that meets the areas that you indicated in terms of subject matter and also how the content is delivered. And then you rate that style based on the look and feel. And we keep those results on file. And anytime you're asking us to curate, we can draw from any of the feedback we have, whether we're aggregating it all together or whether we're just looking at one representative. If we're, let's say we're curating for finance professionals, maybe we want to just look at one person's survey results. We also have that technology built into our platform so that if there is the opportunity or the desire for you to curate on your own, you can use something called a smart list, which takes, if you're searching from within the domain in your organization's domain, it will recognize that, or it might ask you to put the name of your company into the system. And then it will look at the trends. So what do we know about your learners based on the content that's been consumed? What types of courses have been consumed the most? What's most popular? What's least popular? What formats have resonated well? You have learners always have the opportunity to rate courses. So the smart list will pull on those ratings as well. And then it will actually generate a list of courses for you based on the topics that you put in, but also everything that we know about your learners so that you can always make sure that even if you're curating on your own, you're using the latest and greatest technology.
And as I look at this slide, we have the meridian in that circle off to the left, but in reality, that should be both a meridian and an open sesame in that same circle, because what we see in that center, from my standpoint as a meridian, we can help with that automation. We can do that type of reporting, those AI recommendations, which have that output. And Ashley, from your standpoint, let you talk about yours.
Yes, absolutely. I think that all of the ways that technology has advanced, even in the 5 years that I've worked at OpenSesame, has allowed us to have the customers we work with maximize their impact. Every OpenSesame customer has access to what's called an insights dashboard, which is updated in real time. It gives you data on your monthly learner trends, your most used and highest rated courses, your least used and lowest rated courses, your most active learners. This is great because it will pair well with the reporting capability that's in your learning management system. But sometimes you've got content from lots of different providers in your LMS. And so you want to focus maybe specifically on, your Open Sesame content to measure your ROI. That's always there for you. And then we meet with each customer that we support a minimum of once a quarter. But honestly, it's often more regularly than that. And we use those meetings to take a critical look at that data that's coming out and see the trends that have evolved and talk about how we can maximize the impact, the positive impact that we're having. Where do we need to make tweaks? Where are some successes that we can build on, again, so that you've got the best of what technology has to offer, but you also have that human component to make your training that much more impactful.
Okay, we have 2 slides left, everyone, so we're almost to the end, and then we'll take a look and see if anybody has any questions at that point.
This is really, I think, a great place for us to start that wrap up, because what we want to do is make sure that your organization benefits from the best of what both Open Sesame and Meridian have to offer. And so we've talked a lot about strategies you can use to increase learner engagement, how you're going to maximize the impact of your learning and development program. And I think one of the things that I want to make sure that people walk away with is that the benefits to, what your organization has in terms of its goals and objectives, they're all going to be different depending on the industry you have, depending on the makeup of your workforce. And we make sure that we partner with you so that whatever your goals and objectives are, whether right now your focus is on retention, so that you make sure that you're not losing some of your great people, and we can help you build an intentional program that allows people to grow with your organization, or whether your focus is on building that global learning culture that Nancy talked about earlier in the webinar, or whether right now you're at a point where you're behind on your compliance training. And so you need to make sure that your organization isn't at risk. We want to be a meaningful partner with you and make sure that you can accomplish those goals, whatever they may be.
And thinking in terms of the organization impact also is that goals, as Ashley mentioned, we set those and we want to achieve them. But goals are set at that top level and they cascade them down through us. But to achieve them, we need to start at that individual contributor level and work our way back up through to get that impact on the organization in achieving those types of goals. These are just some examples of how we can go about measuring some of that return on the investment that's out there. These are all different ways to assess if the learning has an impact. Some are going to be concrete ways, you're going to see them. Some of others are a little less, but they do have an impact. We just may not be able to put a concrete number to them. So what you're going to need to do identify is what's going to be the factor that you're going to look for in your organization to be able to know that that learning environment you've created is creating an impact for you. And be realistic. Be very realistic about when that impact would become noticeable for you. Okay, if you hold a session sometime in January, are you really going to see an impact in February? Probably not. So you want to be able to make sure that you set the proper expectations for people as to when they would start to see that and what they should be looking for while doing it. So again, it's about you being able to find what is that measurement in your world and then being able to achieve that with all of those strategies and ideas that we have provided to you today. So I'm going to stop. We have a few minutes left. So Ashley, do we have anything in our Q&A area?
I do see that somebody asked what NPS stands for, which is a great question. It stands for Net Promoter Score, which is for many organizations use an NPS or a Net Promoter Score to measure the effectiveness of how they're supporting their clients or people who use their product. So they give us a survey and stakeholders answer the survey, and based on the score they give, the average is the Net Promoter Score. And then we also had a question about LMS. It's funny. I used to work in the federal government, and we use so many acronyms, and I realize it's the same in L&D. LMS stands for Learning Management System, which is what Meridian is, a learning management system.
Any final questions? We have just a couple minutes left if anybody has any additional ones in there. Give you a
While
moment.
people are giving any final questions, I just want to say how much we appreciate your time today. We know that your time, especially as an L&D professional, is probably spoken for in many different ways. And so we appreciate you sharing some of that valuable time with us today.
I second that wholeheartedly, and hopefully you walk away with today with at least one item of something that you can use back in your environments. I've always been an advocate that as long as you walk away with one new idea, then you have been successful in your time. So I hope each of you are able to walk away with at least one item for today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you in future webinars.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Ashley.